screams in my head. Death all around. Look alive.
Well, it happened. In the most unsurprising twist of all time, Gossip Girl 2021 was cancelled by HBO Max after only 2 seasons. And I don't want to be that guy, but I told you so. I told you guys this was gonna happen. I went on a whole rant about it on Instagram like a year ago, and a bunch of people called me crazy and stupid and said I had no idea what I was talking about. Well, Uno reverse card, baby, because I was right. At the end of the day, you just can't delay the inevitable. This thing was never gonna survive. And here's why. I feel like the cancellation of this show kind of signals something bigger with the evolution of television in recent years. Or, more specifically, what television is evolving without. Because I don't know if you noticed, but in the past couple of years, and even in the last couple of months, a lot of teen dramas on television have been cancelled. Like, a lot. And by a lot, I mean almost all of them. It's been an absolute carnage, and it's also not a coincidence. Teen dramas, now more than ever, are very quickly losing popularity and are struggling to survive past a couple of seasons. There is a number of reasons for that, and I was gonna make an entire video about this topic until I realized that every single reason that explains why we are experiencing the slow death of teen dramas on television is perfectly encapsulated in Gossip Girl 2021. This show is like a perfect showcase of everything that went wrong with the genre and why people have widely lost interest in it in recent years. It is the definitive representation of the genre's demise. I don't think there is a better example. And I know I said in my video about season 1 of the Gossip Girl reboot that I would not be watching season 2. I talked about it being my least favorite show of all time, which I stand by that statement, and it still is, because season 1 was just aggressively bad. But despite everything, I kinda got curious. That said though, I got curious, but not for the reasons you'd expect. Let me explain. Usually, when a terrible show gets renewed for a second season, I tend to get curious because I want to see if the writers and showrunners take the criticism given to the first season into account and actually put a genuine effort to improve the show in its second season, instead of taking the other route of disregarding all of the criticism and doubling down on the bad. With Gossip Girl 2021 though, I honestly didn't care to find that out. I was pretty positive that the show wouldn't improve, for reasons that I'll talk about a bit later, so I wasn't really curious about that. No, there's actually 2 very specific reasons why, despite my cosmic hatred of this show, I still decided to take a look at season 2. The first reason is simple. When season 2 started airing, I was kind of expecting everybody and their moms to talk about how much the show sucks and how season 2 was just as bad as season 1, if not worse. But, surprisingly, that's not what happened. What happened was actually kind of worse in a way. See, I didn't get curious about season 2 because everyone was hating on it and talking about how bad and embarrassing it was, just like it happened with season 1. No, season 2 made me curious because nobody was talking about it. Nobody. The first episode came out, and some people talked about how worse the show had gotten from the get-go, which was the predictable part. But then, crickets. Radio silence. It was like the show didn't even exist. The episodes were still coming out every week, but it was so silent that you would have thought it was still on hiatus. I mean, hell, just a couple days ago, I put up a community post to announce this video, and I got a colossal amount of comments and DMs from people who were confused by my post because they didn't even know the second season was out and had already been over for a couple weeks. And that's just just insane to me. Like, it's one thing if people hate on the show openly, but it is a completely different story when people are so indifferent about the show that nobody talks about it while the season is actively airing because most people don't even know season 2 exists. It even got a surprisingly minimal amount of attention from the press, who love writing about teen dramas because it gets them so many easy clicks, and the small amount of outlets that did acknowledge the existence of season 2 were mainly talking about how the show was officially in its flop era, which, if you ask me, it never wasn't. And the only other bit of attention it got was more mockery because Rachel Zegler's name was mispronounced in an episode of season 2 and she called them out on Twitter. And also, weeks later, she happened to like a Twitter post that announced the cancellation of the show. That is all people had to talk about with this season. That is it. And I would like to remind you that we are talking about the successor of one of the biggest pop culture phenomenons of the last 20 years. A show that dominated an entire generation. We are talking about a show that has the name Gossip Girl, but that somehow has about the same amount of cultural relevance as Vin Diesel's music career.
Ow! Jump scare.
But that's not all, because while all of this made me curious enough to watch the first episode of the season, it's not what convinced me to finish the whole thing. No, the reason I became so curious that I had to watch the entire season for myself is this. This is a tweet from Joshua Safran, the showrunner of Gossip Girl 2021, literally begging people to watch the show on social media because nobody was watching season 2 and the numbers were so bad that the show was on the verge of cancellation halfway through the season. And when I saw that, my brain got so confused as to how underwhelming of a show this could be that it got to this point so quickly. Because in case you didn't know, when Gossip Girl 2021 premiered on HBO Max, it was the biggest, most watched show on the entire platform. It was number 1. They had never seen numbers like this before. So you just have to imagine the brutality of the free fall the audience numbers must have gotten to get to the point where the showrunner begs people to watch it, and to the point where HBO Max could not wait to cancel the show with no mercy. And when I say they couldn't wait, I mean it. HBO Max canceled the show a week before the season 2 finale. They were so done with it, they didn't even wait for the season to end. They just axed it immediately. Oh, and for all the 6 fans of this show who constantly try to make up excuses for its cancellation, mostly blaming budgetary issues and all this kind of stuff, no. You can't throw that at people. They're not stupid. Even IndieWire did a whole article about the show's cancellation in which they confirmed through a source close to the production that the show was not canceled because of budgetary reasons. It was canceled because nobody was watching it. They made a bad show, people bailed on it, so they canceled it. It's as simple as that, just accept it. But now, we get to the why. Why did Gossip Girl 2021 fail so spectacularly? Why did audiences bail on the show at such an alarming speed? What happened? Well, I mean, it's not very difficult to figure out. I don't think anyone was really surprised when the show was canceled. It wasn't really a shock. And when you look at this second season, it's kind of obvious. Season 1 was mostly remembered for being underwhelming and cringe and having bad acting, and for the god-awful dialogue, including lines like,
Millie Bobby Brown is pre-sexual.
And we all remember all this stuff about season 1. I already talked about it, and if you ask me, I handled it very calmly. This show feels like it just never fucking ends. It's brutal. This show's not even entertaining. It doesn't even register as escapism. It is fucking nothing. There's nada to get attached to here. It's not fun to watch. It's not even funny to laugh at it. The characters have no charm whatsoever. They just threw it all together and hoped it would be a success because it has the name Gossip Girl. It's just bullshit. Fuck this show. I handled it really well. But season 2 doesn't only double down on the stupidity and mediocrity of season 1, it also manages to be somehow even more forgettable. This season is bland, flat out stupid at times, and everything about it that made it bad in season 1 is still here in season 2. I'm not even gonna do a play-by-play of the season because there just isn't anything to say about its narrative. All of the tropes play out the exact same way. The season itself doesn't really have a story. It's more composed of a handful of very small storylines that are repeated over and over and over again. The writers don't really know how to build tension between the characters. Every conflict in this show is based on accidental misunderstandings between characters that don't communicate and just assume a lot, which they try to play up in a way that just makes your eyes roll. And that's mostly because one of the biggest things about Gossip Girl 2021 that makes it so cringe to watch is the fact that this show thinks it's so funny. Joshua Safran is convinced that his comedy is gold, and you can tell by how the episodes play out. The best example that comes to mind is the second episode of season 2, which was an absolute nightmare to get through. The episode, for the most part, takes place during a dinner where you essentially watch as the show repeats the same joke over and over and over again for 30 minutes. It is excruciating because you can tell they think they're being really funny, so they just keep making the same joke again and again, just copy pasting the same comedic beat over and over because they think if you repeat a joke, it just gets funnier. But I digress, that's just one part of it. I think overall, the biggest narrative failure in the entire show comes with the characters. Obviously. From its very start, it is very clear in season 2 that the writers don't really know what to do with the insane amount of characters this show has. We're following what is essentially the least iconic cast in any teen show I've ever seen, and that's coming from someone who watched Fate the Winx Saga and Pretty Little Liars Original Sin. I just can't get around how bad this core group of characters is. Between the severe lack of chemistry between any of them, the writers' inability to give them a true dynamic, and their general lack of character build, watching these people do stuff is an absolute snooze fest. These characters are completely devoid of anything distinct. Most of them do not really have a personality aside from being arrogant because they're rich, and because a lot of these actors are not very good, they fail to give their respective characters any fun element of personality that would make it enjoyable for the audience to watch them. They're like a monolith where everybody sort of acts the same and nobody really stands out. In other words, they suck. Along with Emily in Paris, Archie Andrews, and more recently HBO Max's Velma, I think Julien Calloway is probably next in line for the title of worst TV protagonist of the last decade. This character is insufferable in ways that I can barely even begin to describe. And it gets really tiring to watch the writers desperately try to convince you the most conceited and selfish character in the cast is a good person. Their approach to this character is super hypocritical, and despite the fact that they seem to believe she's this iconic figure that people will love, they're actually being rather lazy with the way they write her. Julien is unbelievably redundant as a character. Watching her go through the exact same arc in every single episode is the most sleep-inducing thing they could have ever come up with for this character. And 2 seasons later, I am not not changing my stance on the fact that Jordan Alexander simply does not work in this role. She is one of the greatest cases of miscasting I can think of. Her performance is just not good and not dynamic in the slightest, and she fails to bring any sense of charisma to a character we're meant to believe is the most powerful celebrity slash influencer in New York. I'm sorry, she's just not believable as an it girl. Julien is meant to exude pure, natural, untouched iconography. She should be grand, epic, show-stopping, confident, inspiring. But instead, she's like the narrative equivalent of being stuck in traffic. She's just annoying. She's dull and monotonous. She's uninteresting and whiny. It's impossible to believe that anyone would look up to her. She doesn't have a single ounce of charisma in her. Nothing about her is interesting. And again, she goes through the same arc in every episode. I mean, seriously, how many times can you watch Julien forcing herself into other people's business, act all self-righteous, and realize at the end of the episode that she's the one who is problematic and causing the drama? How many times can you repeat that same storyline? Since season 1, since the very first episode of the show, it's the same cycle. Julien starts the episode determined to be a better person. She then finds herself making an impulsive decision. It creates drama. It blows up in her face. She thinks she's the victim because she's super convinced that she's a good person now. Not because she did anything particular to prove that, but because she decided that morning that she would be. But then somebody close to her gets mad at her and she realizes it was her fault all along. She learns a valuable lesson about her own toxic behaviors, and the episode ends with her vowing to be a better person in the future. And then the next episode starts as she is determined to be a better person, and the exact same thing happens. The writers are so remarkably uncreative. They have nothing to say about this character. They have nothing to do with her. She's just stuck in a loop and it's not interesting. It never was. And maybe I'm biased because it is such a pet peeve of mine when a character spends their entire existence in a story just learning the same lesson over and over again. She fucks up, she learns a lesson as a result, which should act as character development, but instead, she immediately unlearns that lesson so she can go through the exact same arc again. Julien is the most boring television character of all time. She's at the top of my list. Even Emily in Paris is more interesting to watch than she is. And if you know my channel, that's saying something. I've never seen a character so underwhelming and so unconvincing as the lead of a show. Gossip Girl 2021 is bad on every possible level, but somehow it still feels like Julien drags the show down. And when it comes to season 2, I could say the exact same thing about her sister, Zoya. Now, Zoya is essentially shelved this season. I think that in a weird way, season 2 solidifies that the writers never truly figured out what this character was supposed to be. I think she was introduced as the Serena to Julien's Blair, but it became very clear very quickly that this dynamic just did not work between these two. The smart thing would have been to make their relationship as estranged sisters the heart of the show and its emotional core, but instead the writers were like, we're not really interested in them being sisters anymore. We're kind of done with that. So they give all the attention to Julien, and Zoya is shelved. Her relationship with Julien is completely non-existent this season. I think they share like a handful of scenes. They barely talk to each other this entire season. They live together, but they just don't really get scenes where they get to interact. And when they do, they're very short and fleeting. It's like they barely know each other. And since Zoya isn't really a part of the story anymore and she doesn't contribute to anything, we're left with the show accidentally making her even more annoying than she was in the first season. Not only through the bad writing she gets, but also because, again, it's very clear the writers never truly figured out what they wanted the character to be. I think we're meant to perceive Zoya as this smart, socially progressive militant who always fights for the right causes, which could be really interesting. But it's kind of astonishing how much it doesn't work. I've rarely seen a character fall so flat, so consistently. And again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, Whitney Peak is actually good as Zoya, but there's nothing she can do to salvage that character. The writers try really hard to make Zoya woke, but they don't know how to give her a personality beyond that. There's nothing to her aside from being the woke one. And it's bizarre because the writers also don't know how to address serious social topics in a smart or genuine way. They only do it in a way that is surface level and performative, but also in a way that is excessively obnoxious. I talked about that in my season 1 video already, but season 2 just takes it to new lengths. So because that's the only personality trait she gets to have, Zoya's character quickly devolves into being this patronizing asshole who spends the show acting all self-righteous and mighty and just makes a point of starting politically driven arguments with every single person she ever has a conversation with. And it's always done with a tone that is so excessively arrogant, condescending, aggressive, and petty that even if you agree with her opinions, you still find her insufferable as you watch her looking to start a fight in every scene she's in.
I'm not following.
A bunch of dermatologists.
No, I mean, I don't care. And I need to get in there. Some of us have hair. I'm not like you. Obi, I'm outside your bubble. Sometimes I feel like you don't get that. And other times I worry you get it too much. That I'm just charity, another box for you to check, and your performative solidarity.
Poisoning my sherry with him around.
An occupational hazard when you run a right-wing propaganda machine bent on destabilizing a global democracy. Am I right?
Davis is being generous. We could both stand to be more open-minded.
Let's open our minds to the psychological implications that come with accepting charity from two people who've been nothing but awful to us.
We should stay out of this because it's not our fight.
And what about the great changes that are being made to this institution? It isn't progress if you're getting to pick and choose who's allowed in the door. Are you sure this isn't about you not being daddy's favorite?
This is about justice and exposing a bloated, dated organization for the hypocrites they are.
Do you know?
A provocative play like Aaron is exactly what Broadway needs after a year on pause. What it doesn't is another revisal of anything, especially one devised by white people, about white people, starring white people.
She acts like she's morally superior to everyone around her, and it's like she feels compelled to let everybody know she's morally superior every single time she opens her mouth. And since most of her scenes this season are with her dad, who has no personality and has for only motivation his desire to offer Zoya a comfortable life, Zoya's constant judging and condescending remarks at his career and financial choices only serve to make her look like an ungrateful brat who thinks she's also too good for her dad's devotion to her. And again, Zoya doesn't really have a story this season, so it's really awkward to have her here, because it's very clear that the writers didn't know what to do with her, but they also wouldn't write her out, so it becomes this weird thing where the show has to interrupt plot lines in the middle of their progression to cut back to Zoya just being an asshole to everyone and picking fights left and right to satisfy her moral superiority complex, and it just sucks the fun out of the show. And the show isn't fun to begin with, so you can only imagine. I don't know, these characters take themselves way too seriously to be enjoyable in the context of the series. Cause could you imagine if in the original Gossip Girl, instead of being the iconic and dramatic character we've come to know and love, Blair Waldorf instead spent her entire time on screen preaching about systemic issues, corporate democracy, generational privilege, and debating the ethics of wealth, individualism, and cultural hegemony. Do you really think that's what Gossip Girl needs as a show? And don't get me wrong, those are all noble causes and important topics that need to be addressed as a society. Everybody agrees with that. But also, I don't think it's insane to say that But that's not what people watch Gossip Girl for. It's just not what I turn to if I want to hear about these things, especially not if it's to be handled in such a shallow and patronizing way. Go watch these women, you will learn way more. But to conclude here, I can't even really say that Zoya was ruined because she was never a good character. There was never anything there to ruin. But this season gets a little embarrassing for her because it's just so clear the writers had no idea what to do with her. So they just use her as a mouthpiece to spew some social justice at your face every 10 minutes with no depth whatsoever because Joshua Safran thinks that's what Gen Z audiences want to see, but also because he seems to think Gen Z audiences are not smart enough to deserve having those topics communicated to them with a single ounce of intelligence. And I'm not even a Gen Z, I'm very much a millennial, but I honestly feel kind of offended by the way Gen Zers are constantly being talked down to by media handled by boomers. That's literally what is killing teen media right now. And the part I find particularly frustrating is that these boomers are super hypocritical with their so-called values. Joshua Safran loves to publicly pat himself on the back and talk about how his show is too smart and too progressive for lame, overplayed tropes. He says his new Gossip Girl will never have any slut-shaming or catfights because he's too good for this petty, regressive stuff. But also,
I invited Eliza. Really? Hey, stay away from my sister!
he's just lying. He's lying. And it's the same in the way his characters are written. Julien and most of the characters act all high and mighty about abolishing men who treat women like objects and being tired of the objectification of women. But meanwhile, their best friend Monet treats every woman she sleeps with like subhuman, disposable objects, to the point where she gets annoyed if they even try to tell her their names.
My name's... No.
Yet they never call her out on it. That never comes up. It's like the show is telling you that the principle isn't the problem, the gender is. It's okay to treat women like worthless, disposable objects that are only here for your sexual satisfaction. As long as you're not a man doing it, it's okay if women do it to other women. It's cool, it's girl boss slay. Make it make sense, Joshua. That's my point. It's like the show is trying to have it both ways, but it's not possible. Not in a show like Gossip Girl that is all about watching uberly rich kids drown in their own opulence and drama. They want the characters to be woke and super aware of social issues in a way that makes them seem like they have particular values, but they also want these characters to get up to the same shenanigans we saw in the original series with a complete lack of morals, and that doesn't work. All it does is make your cast a walking contradiction. The characters of the original Gossip Girl were bad people. They were terrible human beings. They were selfish, rude, exploitative, manipulative, spoiled. They were awful. But the show owned it. The show knew what they were and went with it. It didn't try to make them pass as good people in hiding. It doesn't mean they were never capable of good. All of them were to some extent at some point. But the show never shied away from the fact that they were all assholes. That was the whole point of the show. They were rich, mean people who lived in a bubble that was completely removed from the real world, and we watched them interact as a part of a fucked up fantasy about the 1%. That's what Gossip Girl always was, and that's why it was fun. These people are not relatable, and if you try to make them relatable and socially aware and quote-unquote human, it just doesn't work anymore. You're missing the point of what makes this premise entertaining. The channel ModernGurlz made a video about the Gossip Girl reboot, and I think they hit the nail right on the head when talking about the handling of the characters.
Compared to the 2000s, teens today are far more politically aware, so it makes sense that the Gossip Girl revival would attempt to showcase this. However, they go about it in the wrong ways, coming across as disingenuous and patronizing. It often feels as though it's patting itself on the back for being so progressive and woke, when in actuality, it's addressing these issues in a very shallow and surface-level manner. The original characters were toxic and terrible, but at least they weren't lecturing each other and the audience about their ethical and moral superiority. These new, equally wealthy characters are constantly trying to prove that they're progressive, but the son of a multi-millionaire attempting to be one of the people isn't interesting. It's condescending. You could also show how two-faced and malicious they were by having them be vocal about these causes in public, posting on Instagram, going to protests, etc., but in private have them talk about how they don't believe in these issues at all, which wouldn't be far off from the real 1% who are similarly all talk and no action.
I'll leave a link to the full video down below. It's really good. You should absolutely watch it. And you know what? That goes for you too, Joshua. I'm gonna need you to focus, okay? This is serious. Oh, and that's by far the biggest problem with the show, by the way. Joshua Safran, the showrunner. He is 100% responsible for ruining this for everyone. Now, if you don't know, Joshua Safran is not just anybody. He is very familiar with the Gossip Girl universe. He was an executive producer on the original series. He wrote 18 of its 121 episodes. And he also wrote a few episodes of Gossip Girl Acapulco, a 2013 Mexican remake of the series that was cancelled after one season, as well as 2 episodes of Gossip Girl Indonesia in 2020, another spin-off that died after only 9 episodes, I think. And in the middle of all that, he created the show Quantico with Priyanka Chopra that was cancelled after 3 seasons, and a Netflix original musical series called Soundtrack that I have literally never heard about. Needless to say, Joshua being the one to bring the Gossip Girl reboot to life was an obvious choice for Warner Brothers. But it also turned out to be a pretty big mistake on their part. And the main reason for that is very simple. Joshua Safran cannot handle criticism. He can't do it. He just can't. And that wouldn't be a problem if he was a good writer. But he's not. He's not a good writer, which in itself is not good, but it's also made worse by the fact that he seems to think he is a good writer, and even more than that, he seems to have too much pride to listen to anyone who has something to say about that. In fact, he would just kind of mock people who voiced concerns about the show's flaws and provided some constructive criticism online. He'd just brush them off on Twitter and make fun of them. When audiences and critics called out how stupid the decision of making the teachers of Constance the new Gossip Girl was, he went on this whole rant on Twitter to publicly nag them and proceeded to literally mansplain the concept of Gossip Girl to everybody. Gossip Girl was always about a cyberstalker. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. That doesn't mean your take on it in the reboot was good. It's still a terrible fucking premise, and every bit of criticism it got was super valid. Get your head out of your ass. You're not the genius you think you are. Oh, and also, when he found out there was a small but vocal Reddit community that watched and supported the show, all while pointing out its shortcomings and, again, providing constructive criticism, his only response to it was to go on Twitter and say, "I'm glad I'm not on Reddit," with the condescending kiss emoji at the end. Basically, he completely buried his head in the sand. He became like Kylo Ren, this stubborn and unreceptive man with power who just refuses to see the other side. Joshua is convinced his show is perfect, and a 10 out of 10, he is convinced it is super smart and next level brilliant, and he thinks anyone who has the slightest bit of criticism about it is just a hater and stupid, and he mocks them on Twitter. In other words, one of the biggest reasons why the Gossip Girl reboot failed is because Joshua Safran wasn't running the show with his brain, he was running the show with his ego. Anyways, let's move on. Are there any characters we should talk about? I mean, there's Audrey. I also still don't understand what the writers were trying to do with her. She's probably the most unaccomplished character in the show. She doesn't have a single trait, and every single second she spends on this show is about the 2 men she's in love with. Aside from that, the writers never bothered to make her character anything. She doesn't have a personality. She doesn't really have opinions about anything. She's never a part of the primary storyline. She's as pointless as a character can be. Her whole shtick is that she doesn't care about anything and she's always annoyed. That's like her one thing. The only emotion she's allowed to express is being annoyed. And since she has the same arrogance and bitchiness as the other characters, because everybody has to have those personality traits, she ends up coming across like that one woman on TikTok who was like super condescending and was like trying to mock adults who watch anime.
Are adults really watching anime? I'm sorry. Are we? I mean, I'm not being a bully. I know, like, I mean completely unironically. Are you alone and you put it on? And you have a college degree and everything, and you're just like,
Turn your big ass around and get the fuck back to your fucking seat. The fuck is wrong with your ashy ass?
She got ripped to shreds on social media, but anyways, back to Audrey. In 2 seasons, we still learn absolutely nothing about Audrey. We just meet her dad at some point, but even that entire storyline with her dad is not really about her, it's about Julien. Like, really, the most we know about Audrey outside of her sex life is that she doesn't like Julien's influencer side, and that's why she's not a big fan of Luna and Monet, because they help Julien with her brand. That's it. It's the only piece of information we have about how she feels about things. That's very little to learn about a character in 2 seasons, and the worst part is, just to tell you how little work is given to this character, we don't even learn this tiny fact from the show. That information came from Joshua Safran's Twitter. In the show itself, the only thing that is relevant to Audrey is her 2 boyfriends, Aki and Max. I'm not even gonna talk about Aki. I refuse to. I think referring to him as a character is an insult to fiction. He's barely an entity. He's just a tree. Actually, that might also be an insult to trees. I don't think Evan Mock could play a tree accurately. He's so bad. To be fair to him, though, they only hired him because of his looks. He had never acted before, and Aki is his first role. But you know what? I don't care. There are plenty of first-time actors that fucking killed it in their roles. Angus Cloud in Euphoria, Rachel Zegler in West Side Story, Madeline Brewer in Orange is the New Black. I could go all day. The point is, Aki is the worst. He is so irrelevant as a character that the only noteworthy thing there is to say about him is the fact that Asia Jackson mocked the show's cancellation on Twitter by calling out the producer's decision to cast a Filipino actor to play a Japanese character, which, for a show that claims to be so woke and socially aware, that was a surprisingly ironic decision to make. But yeah, nothing else to say about Aki. On the other end, I was really hoping that Max would be the saving grace of this season, because he was the only good thing about season 1, and Thomas Doherty, who plays him, is a genuinely good actor, but alas, I was wrong. This season, Max is significantly downgraded as a character. Just like towards the end of season 1, he only acts as an extension of Audrey and Aki and stops feeling like his own character. He loses the small bit of personality and agency he had to become an eternal crybaby that is not allowed to exist outside of the context of his sex life with his 2 partners. And I gotta say, for what is the first show in this specific genre to introduce a main romantic plotline centered around a polyamorous relationship, boy did they put zero effort into this trio. Every decision made with them is the laziest decision that could have been made. Just like Julien, the Audrey, Aki, Max throuple is just stuck in a perpetual loop of bad melodramatic beats being copy-pasted a million times over. This is how it goes. An episode starts with these 3 having sex, but something feels wrong. It doesn't feel the way it should. One of the 3 gets very doubtful or jealous or feels left out, and now it's super dramatic because none of them really communicate, so they get mad at each other because of some dumb misunderstanding that could have been avoided in 1 sentence, and it drags on forever. But they eventually figure their shit out and realize by the end of the episode that they're better when they're together because they love each other very deeply at the end of the day. It's a big win for the trio, and they end the episode riding off into the sunset as they learn a valuable lesson. A lesson that is then immediately unlearned so that they can go through the exact same arc in the next episode. That's it. That's all they do this entire show. It's a never-ending cycle of nothingness. And you want to know what the worst part is? The worst part is that season 2 ends with them breaking up, and Joshua Safran said in an interview after the show was cancelled that season 3 was going to re-explore their dynamic as Aki and Audrey realize they've jumped the gun and actually want to be with Max, and so they would spend the season trying to make it work with him. Oh, so you mean they would be going through the exact same storyline as the first 2 seasons? Again? Gee, Josh, you shouldn't have. Do you get what I mean when I say this show is just redundant? Like, do you believe me now? The Gossip Girl reboot is in a perpetual state of not going anywhere. It's a very frustrating experience. And it's even more frustrating when it's touching on characters that actually have potential. Characters like Monet and Luna. Monet is the only character who gets to shine this season after having a mediocre at best presence in season 1, and Savannah Lee Smith, who plays her, is absolutely killing it in this role. But the reality is, she's just stuck in a show that doesn't know how to support her performance. Her villain era is the only element of the show that works this season, which is not surprising because, surprise, surprise, Joshua, it's the only element of the show that feels like something the original Gossip Girl series would have done. But unfortunately, it becomes very clear very quickly that Monet is not a priority for the writers. So her stint as the new Queen Bee of Constance is incredibly short-lived and robbed of any real conclusion. Like, as the season goes, Monet fades away as a character and kind of goes back to being a sidekick. And it's just disappointing when you see the potential that was there. There was a real opening for real character building. This season puts an emphasis on the strangely hostile relationship Monet has with her parents, more specifically her mom, who is in a perpetual state of being disappointed in her daughter. The show hints at a parallel showing that Monet wants to conquer the power dynamics at Constance because she feels so small and disregarded at home. We also get to see that this relationship with her parents causes her to have a very distorted vision of love. I think the only good scene in the entire season is the scene where Monet admits that all she wants in life is to be loved, but she is also terrified of being loved because she's afraid to get hurt. Therefore, she prefers being feared and hated and force people into submission because if she can control all of it, she can ensure she will never be hurt. And I actually love that. It's very reminiscent of Blair Waldorf. I mean, it's a little different. Blair craves power because of her insecurities, but the idea of needing control over people because of the duality between being desperate for love and fearing it at the same time is super intriguing on paper. Like, those are all fantastic themes being attached to Monet as a character. Themes that good writers would have explored in order to give her a true arc. Like, genuinely, everything was set up for her to be the main character of season 2. But instead, here, aside from bringing them up once or twice very briefly, those themes are completely abandoned and left with no real resolution, just like the rest of her entire storyline. The second half of the season sees Monet being shoved aside by the writers to focus more on Julien. Again, effectively killing the one interesting storyline in the entire show prematurely, and it's kind of infuriating. Joshua and the writers completely disrespected that character because it was clear they didn't realize she was the audience's favorite and clearly didn't care about her all that much. Monet as a character is just a giant missed opportunity, just like Luna. Along with Monet and Max in season 1, Luna is one of the the 3 characters in the show that actually have a sense of charisma that could be used very well, but the writers are absolutely not interested in letting her be a full-fledged character. Zion Moreno is fucking awesome in this role, but again, Joshua never gave her anything to work with, and everything about her becomes a missed opportunity that could have made this show a slam dunk in favor of giving the most boring television character of all time a bigger spotlight she never deserved. Like, honestly, if you ask me, I think Monet and Luna should have been the 2 central characters of the Gossip Girl reboot instead of Julien and Zoya. They make more sense as leading characters. They have all the charisma the show needed, and they were the only 2 who had interesting traits. But again, Joshua does nothing with them, and Luna probably gets it worse than Monet. I've seen people on social media say that they love that the writers didn't define Luna's character by the fact that she's trans, and I would agree with that if it wasn't for the dumb reality that the only reason why they didn't make Luna all about her gender identity is because they were not interested in making Luna anything. They never gave a shit about building that character in any capacity. They never did anything with her. Tell me one thing we learned about Luna as a person. Go ahead. I'll wait. She spends the first season being Julien's little minion, even if Joshua loves to say there are no characters on the show that could be referred to as minions because he's so woke, but also...
Come. I want that. Ooh, Cartier. You said you had updates for me?
I want fresh ginger tea, and when I say fresh ginger, I mean make it yourself.
He's a fucking liar. And then in season 2, she does a whole lot of nothing until the show finally decides to focus on her for about 20 minutes, during which we learn she has a very weird relationship with her mother who is super competitive with her. Which is another interesting theme that is never resolved because the writers decided to give Luna her very first storyline 2 episodes before the show was cancelled. It's honestly a shame. I don't understand how they couldn't see the potential in this. And regardless, why go get somebody as talented and effortlessly charismatic as Zion Moreno, only to then do nothing with her at all? Ugh. Anyway, there are other characters that are not even worth mentioning at all. Obi is so useless that I fast-forwarded through a number of his scenes. I mean, fuck me, talk about a badly written character. I cannot tell you how tired I was of watching him. This fake-ass wannabe tortured character who perpetually feels sad and guilty that he was born and grew up rich, but also still lives rent-free in a 2-floor loft paid for by the rich mom he keeps antagonizing makes me want to punch him in the face. And you can tell he doesn't come across like that on purpose, because the way the show plays out, it's very obvious the writers want you to like Obi, but it fails spectacularly. If anything, he's a real display of the writer's hypocrisy when it comes to the fake progressive values on the show. Plus, he doesn't really have any reason to exist in this season, aside from setting up an unfunny incest joke where it turns out that his seemingly perfect girlfriend is actually using him as a decoy so she can keep sleeping with her own brother. No, I'm not kidding, that's a thing that actually happens in the show. It's a bad twist that is played off as a grotesque comedic moment, and then that character is never seen again and the storyline never gets a real resolution. Long story short, everything that has to do with Obi is a giant waste of time, but somehow the writers would rather have him and his incest plot twist in the front over Monet and Luna. Fantastic. Zoya's dad is not worth talking about. Shan is not worth talking about. These 2 teachers can die for all I care. Again, as you're probably noticing, this show has an absurd amount of characters, and oh yeah, I forgot to mention the thing. Okay, Let me explain. So when Gossip Girl 2021 started airing, most of the people that tuned in were, obviously, fans of the original series. However, these fans bailed on the show very quickly, which probably explains why the viewership dropped so dramatically. So the hope for HBO Max for this reboot were kinda crushed. They were hoping to bank on those old fans to secure themselves a hit, but they delivered a show that made old fans run away almost immediately. So for season 2, they really wanted to try and gain those fans back. How, you ask? Well, by having characters from the original show appear in the new one. One of the producers explained that they gave an open invitation to the entire cast of the original Gossip Girl to come back if they wanted to. They reached out to everyone in the OG cast, but they probably all said, haha, fuck no. All except for one. Michelle Trachtenberg. So yes, season 2 of Gossip Girl sees the return of Georgina Sparks, the beloved chaotic villain from the original show. And the only word I have to describe her return is embarrassing. That's the only word that comes to mind. Watching a grown-up Georgina in what I assume is her 30s getting down to the same bullshit she did when she was 16 is just cringe. The fact that she tries to be Gossip Girl again like a decade after the events of the original series is completely stupid and unnecessary, especially because she doesn't even have a motive. She wants Gossip Girl back and she wants to create chaos with the lives of teenagers in New York, but for no reason, just because. She also randomly says that she regularly breaks into Serena and Dan's apartment in Brooklyn and replaces their oat milk with lactose because their kid is lactose intolerant, and apparently she's been doing it for 4 or 5 years. Like, girl, what? Again, it's just the writers thinking they're being really funny, and like that's basically what her entire time on the show is like. She sabotages the wedding of Max's parents for no reason at all. As far as we know, she doesn't even know them. She just kind of ruins their day without any motivation. It's really awkward to watch. Like, she feels so out of place in this. She doesn't even show up in an exciting, show-stopping way, like with the grand reveal, like at the end of an episode with a big cliffhanger. No, she just casually, randomly shows up in the middle of an episode as if it's a regular scene. There's no punch to it. It's just meh. Michelle Trachtenberg's performance is also incredibly odd. I don't know if it was a choice on her end or if it's a director call, but Georgina has completely lost the charisma she had in the original show. Like here, she feels so mechanical. Michelle's delivery is bizarrely robotic. It almost sounds like an AI is reading her lines.
So compact, so beige, those forgettable features. I could never blend in with this bone structure. Jordan did not feel left out.
You and Jordan?
We fucked. Before I threatened him, it was surprisingly satisfying. It's always the quiet ones, right? Fine, I'll go. Don't worry, I didn't drink it. Loving your work today, friend. The DMs, that fake email. I knew you had a little sparks in your blood. I told him I would tell you if he didn't do what I said.
That was the leverage?
You have 24 hours to turn up the heat, or else I'm taking control permanently. And I would think twice about that superstore wine. Or maybe it was your toothpaste. Don't you love Russian roulette? This was just a test. And you passed. We make a great team, you and I. You tainted Gossip Girl. And I tainted Jordan. I told you I would go out with a bang.
Girl, shut the fuck up. You thought you ate that? Bitch,
like, she sounds like she doesn't even want to be here. And narratively speaking, it's just as much of a head scratcher. Georgina comes back because she wants to be Gossip Girl again for no real reason. And then an episode later, she just changes her mind and she just leaves, and she's never seen or mentioned again. She has no impact on the story, she has no point, she just comes and goes, and I guess the show expects you to be excited just because she's from the original show. But no, it's not exciting. Everything about it felt forced, disingenuous, and tired. And so, the big return of a star character from the original show that was supposed to make the season for old fans ends up being the most forgettable aspect of an already forgettable season. And that's it. That's the incredibly underwhelming cast. An overly convoluted group of characters that, even after 2 seasons, still do not feel like they're actually friends. I still struggle to understand why they even are friends, and the show never really bothers to show you that. They tell you about it all the time, but they never show you. All of their bonds are incredibly surface level and devoid of any meaning. And honestly, it's just a shame. Gossip Girl 2021 is probably the biggest waste of potential I've seen on television in recent years. And it's not like there were only bad ideas attached to the show, but the few good ideas present were just, again, wasted. And that's both for the show itself and its marketing. I think one of the most interesting things the marketing did with this show was creating real Instagram profiles for the main characters. Like, you can actually go and follow Zoya, Max, and company on Instagram and see what they're up to. Which, by the way, all of you should follow me on Instagram because I refuse to have less followers than Aki. Like, that's legitimately insulting. I have to beat him, so follow me on Instagram. But while the idea was really good, they ended up doing nothing with it, which is not surprising at this point, but still. Like, there was no interesting viral move, no clever use of the concept. In the end, they just made Instagram accounts for fictional characters, and they just post photos on it here and there. It's completely useless. It's so sad. Like, even outside of the show, they don't know what to do with these characters. It's all very bland and hollow. And because the characters are so bland and hollow, the writers can't really come up with solid storylines to support them. And that's already bad on its own, but it's only made worse by the fact that for some reason, the writers just refuse to give the show a central conflict. They have an insanely large cast, like the show has way too many characters for its own good. But for some reason, they make a point of keeping everyone as separate as humanly possible. There's never one central storyline for the characters to tackle as a unit. All of these characters are instead sent off to their own little corner of the show to deal with small storylines that are usually 1 episode long and that, as we've seen with Julien and the throuple, are bound to not have a real resolution because the writers want to recycle the same storylines in every episode. So in the end, you're left with a show that just never gets to the point because it doesn't have one. Like, genuinely. The Gossip Girl reboot has a grand total of 22 episodes. Season 1 had 12, Season 2 had 10. 22 episodes. And it took 20 episodes for the show to finally have a central conflict the characters can deal with together. I find it astonishing that this show finally decided to have a story just 2 episodes before the end. It took them 2 entire seasons to try that. To tell you how scattered the characters of the show have been, by the time the finale starts, most of the main characters still have not gotten a chance to interact with each other. We're talking about the season finale. In the final episode of the show, some of the main characters talk to each other for the first time since season 1. And even better yet, some characters finally talk to each other for the first time ever, and some characters end the show without ever having talked to each other. Zoya and Aki never interacted. Shan never talked to most of the cast, and I'm pretty sure Monet and Max never talked to each other the entire season. Everyone is just so scattered for no reason. Max, Audrey, and Aki are in one corner going through the same arc every episode. Julien is in another corner going through the same arc in every episode. Who the fuck knows what Zoya is doing? Obi is in a corner being angry at his mom, and Monet and Luna are doing their own thing elsewhere. The show is all over the place. It doesn't know what it wants to be. There is no central conflict until the last 2 episodes, and that central conflict is the only character of the show I have not mentioned in this video a single time, and that is Gossip Girl herself.
Oh shit. Here we go again.
So I talked about it in my first video, and I mentioned it very briefly earlier, but the most astonishingly stupid decision Joshua made about the Gossip Girl reboot was the decision to reveal the identity of Gossip Girl in the very first episode. Not only that, but that decision also involved making Gossip Girl the teachers of Constance Billard. More specifically, all of them are sort of under the command of one teacher named Kate Keller, who is played by Tavi Gevinson. And unanimously, I think the one thing everybody agrees about when it comes to Gossip Girl 2021 is that this character doesn't work, and making her Gossip Girl was literally what made audiences run away so fast. Kate Keller is a train wreck of a character. Nothing about her works. Tavi Gevinson is not really good in the role. I've talked about it a bunch in my last video, so go watch that if you haven't. But in terms of writing, we are so far away from anything worthwhile. Kate doesn't make sense as a teacher, she doesn't make sense as a writer, and she does not make sense as Gossip Girl. Her character is incredibly one-note and arrogant and annoying, and basically, she doesn't really change. She never really has an arc, and this season, she does a whole lot of nothing. She spends the entire season trying to keep her identity a secret and interacting with a bunch of people, and her story is all over the place, and it's just annoying, especially because the direction the writers take with Gossip Girl as a concept is so bad. Like, by the end of the season, the adults in the show are more involved with Gossip Girl than the kids are. Like, Monet's parents use Gossip Girl to further their corporate empire. They make deals with Gossip Girl. Like, the most boring shit ever that you don't want to see in a Gossip Girl show. Like, who the fuck wants to watch Gossip Girl taking part in corporate espionage? Who the fuck cares? They completely ruined the concept. Gossip Girl is no longer this watchful eye, this entity that narrates the show as we observe the characters, almost like we are Gossip Girl ourselves. Now Gossip Girl is just an influencer with absolutely zero mystery and none of the impact the original had. It's so lame, and it's such a magnificent lack of understanding of what made the original Gossip Girl so fun, which is mind-blowing to me because this show was made by the people who made the original. What happened in those 15 years that made you lose your magic so badly? And especially with that weak-ass ending. Because, oh yeah, the ending. If you don't know, Gossip Girl 2021 ends with Kate Keller getting arrested and seemingly going to prison after being exposed as Gossip Girl. Or more specifically, it ends with Kate being tricked into outing herself as Gossip Girl to the police, in what is probably the stupidest twist this show has ever attempted. The idea is that over the course of season 2, Kate starts being greedy and power hungry. Gossip Girl has become a powerful entity that truly has power over the elite of the Upper East Side, yada yada yada. And I believe the storyline they're trying to pull off is that somewhere along the line, Kate stopped wanting to do Gossip Girl for reasons she thought noble, and instead just became addicted to the fame. She's on a high. The power of the entity has completely corrupted her. Now, on paper, that's not the worst idea. I could be on board with this concept, it's actually quite interesting, but there would have needed to be a real gradual change in her character, which there wasn't. Kate does a complete 180 personality-wise in the last 2 episodes of the show, and this sudden obsession with power and fame kind of comes out of nowhere. It feels very random, and so it makes her eventual demise completely incoherent. Basically, in the last 2 episodes-ish, all of the teenagers finally band together for the first time to try and uncover the real identity of Gossip Girl and take her down once and for all. They try to do it in a lot of stupid ways that obviously don't work out. It's really boring to watch. But long story short, their final plan is to create a crazy public stunt that would make so much noise around Gossip Girl that the media will be all over it. They want to do that in the hopes that Gossip Girl will like the attention too much and will out herself to take all the credit. Gossip Girl. The anonymous stalker. Sure, the plan makes no sense and the thought process behind it comes out of nowhere. They have no reason to believe Gossip Girl would do that, but whatever. The stunt they come up with is to have Zoya walk the stairs of the Met Gala and falsely reveal herself as being Gossip Girl and essentially break the internet. Nope, I am not kidding. The finale of the show actually takes place at the Met Gala. But this is where things get incredibly stupid. So many brain cells gone. Basically, the plan works. Zoya walks the stairs of the Met Gala in a big dress that has written on it, "I am Gossip Girl." It's very dramatic, it takes forever to happen, but it does happen, and it works. The world freaks out, the media freaks out, it's a whole thing, blah blah blah. Now Kate sees this, and her boyfriend is like, "Oh, well, you're free now. Nobody will ever know it's you. Literally, all you have to do is nothing and you'll be safe forever." Which, let me remind you, is literally all she's been trying to do all season. But whatever. Then, the following night, Kate is in bed and cannot sleep. And get ready, because this is where I lost it watching the finale. This is so ridiculous. Kate cannot sleep, and she gets a notification on her phone from a news outlet reporting that Shonda Rhimes and Ryan Murphy are in a bidding war for movie rights about Gossip Girl, and that they are about to meet with Zoya in the middle of the night in some random restaurant to discuss a movie deal with who they believe to be Gossip Girl. And the worst part is, she believes it! Kate sees this, she sneaks out of bed so her boyfriend doesn't wake up, and she then goes to the restaurant and proudly announces herself as the real Gossip Girl and explains that nobody should have the credit for her accomplishment.
You can't believe these women. They're not Gossip Girl, and they don't have the rights to her story.
Miss Keller? Oh my god.
My story.
Do you realize how stupid this is? Let me make sure that you understand what just happened. Kate saw that Shonda Rhimes was going to meet Gossip Girl in the middle of the night to have a meeting about movie rights on the story of Gossip Girl. So she walked into the place where she thinks the meeting is and outed herself as a criminal who stalked blackmailed and destroyed the families and lives of children who go to the school she works at because she wants Shonda Rhimes to know it was her and so she can be recognized for it. Do you realize how dumb that is? It goes against everything her character is, and obviously the meeting was a trap and she exposed herself to the police, who then proceeds to arrest her.
What about the rights?
If you were a kid, maybe, but no one wants to see a teacher.
It is the most absurd, unintentionally goofy, and nonsensical way they could have ever dealt with Kate's downfall. It's so stupid! What was the point of all that? And why is Andy Cohen here? There's just so many holes in that thing. So many holes. All of it is just weirdly rushed. It's not well thought out at all. It just feels like something they pulled out of their ass at the very last second. Joshua Safran said after the finale that he knew since the beginning that Kate would end up going to prison after getting caught as Gossip Girl. More specifically, he said he knew since episode 5 of season 1. And, I know I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, but I think Joshua Safran is lying. I'm sorry, I have such a hard time buying that. It is so painfully clear that the first season wasn't going in that direction. Most of the criticism of season 1 is about how creepy it is that the teachers are doing this and that the show argues that they have a point. I even talked about that in my first video. Season 1 spends so much time trying to justify Kate's actions and over-villainizing the kids to bait the audience into siding with her. We have to sit through so many scenes where the show argues that she is creating meaningful, positive change and making the kids better by doing what she does. They even villainize the other teachers who are trying to use Gossip Girl for personal vendettas so that Kate can come across as the hero who is using Gossip Girl for the right reasons. I'm sorry, I don't believe him. I think he's lying. I think he believed making Gossip Girl the teachers who want to get back at the rich kids was a genuinely brilliant idea and a super woke take on Gossip Girl with his let's fuck up the wealthy thing, and I think he was convinced people would love it. But then the show came out and everybody thought it was the dumbest fucking idea and everybody made fun of it online and critics thought it was ridiculous too. And I think Joshua was completely taken off guard by that. And so in season 2, he decided to retcon his initial take to rework Kate as a villain who gets too greedy and then pretended it was the plan all along to try and save face. It's the only logical scenario, because you know what? If I'm wrong and he's actually telling the truth and this was the plan since season 1, then buddy, your failure is astronomical. You are telling me that you've been planning this ending for Kate since 2021 and that's what you came up with? Kate outing herself as a criminal over movie rights?
That's suspicious. That's weird.
Even by Gossip Girl 2021 standards, I have a very hard time believing this ending for Kate wasn't a last-minute decision. She's a bad character with very little to her, but even with that thin layer of writing and character building given to her, I can still say without the shadow of a doubt that outing herself as Gossip Girl for a meeting with Shonda Rhimes is completely out of character for Kate. After everything she did to protect her identity, that's what makes her flinch? It makes no sense. This ending makes no sense. Your character had a complete personality change in the last 2 episodes, and that last switch comes out of nowhere.
I'm losing my goddamn mind.
So yeah, Gossip Girl 2021 ends with the kids defeating Gossip Girl and moving on with their lives, having learned absolutely nothing and having solved none of their problems. Julien is still a terrible person who doesn't understand that she is a terrible person and sees herself as a martyr, constantly victim of injustice. Audrey, Max, and Aki never figured out their relationship and ended the show just as confused about where they are as they were when it started. Obi is still sad that he's rich. Monet never fixed any of her family issues and never managed to achieve her goals. And Zoya still doesn't know what she wants about anything, and she ends the show as directionless and unaccomplished as she started it. The only character that ends the show in a place that showcases some evolution is Luna, who becomes one of the biggest fashion icons in the world or something. But I can't even count that because that ascension happens off screen and it's only mentioned by Julien very briefly after a time jump. Not a single one of those characters had a real arc. They're all the exact same people as they were in season 1. The entire show is a huge waste of time. It tries to set things up for a potential season 3, like Julien finds her aunt in Italy and there is a very clumsy attempt at building a mystery around her and Zoya's mother. It comes out of nowhere. In season 1, their mom is brought up quite a lot and there is never any hint at something fishy being there. We just know that she died when they were young and that's it. Like, this huge plot point appearing out of nowhere at the end with no setup is really weird. Like, as far as I can remember, there isn't a single point in the show where it is said or hinted at that Julien has been trying to track down her estranged family members to the point where she makes a trip all the way to Italy to find them. Like, that would have been actually interesting during the season. I don't know why you decided to keep that for the last 10 minutes. Joshua has been doing a lot of interviews talking about what plans were for season 3, and a lot of people are clowning him online saying none of it sounds interesting, and I agree. It sounds like it was gonna be just as flat as the first 2 seasons. And look, I usually don't cheer for a show's cancellation. I've said it before on the channel, but a show being cancelled really means that hundreds and hundreds of people just lost their jobs. Like production people, makeup artists, lighting departments, editors. Like, there are so many moving parts to a TV series being made. It's not just about the actors and the writers. So usually, I don't ask for shows to be cancelled. I just want them to be better. But this is gonna be my one exception. I cannot deny the fact that there is a part of me that is kinda glad that this show was killed. Gossip Girl 2021 on its own acts as a mystical representation of everything that went wrong with teen dramas. It is the A-grade example of why this genre is dying. A genre that has become insulting to audiences' intelligence, talks down to its target demographic constantly, forces hypocritical, disingenuous values, all in an attempt to get woke points with audiences. Everything feels forced, and there is such a serious lack of care and effort in the writing. Nothing makes sense, there is no attempt at building true characters, nobody gets to have clear arcs. These shows barely have stories anymore. It is just a massive cesspool of awfulness, laziness, and cringe. Gossip Girl 2021 is the most accomplished vision of how the genre has spent the last few years continuously settling for mediocrity. And it's not like it's gonna be remembered or anything. Gossip Girl 2021 might be my least favorite show of all time, and I might always hate it with a burning passion, but that's just me. The show represents everything I despise about the current state of Hollywood, but the reality is, this show will be forgotten so fast. Just like other failed spin-offs and reboots of this era of TV, no one will remember this show a year from now, especially not in this specific context of the teen drama genre being in a state of decay. This show had no real impact, it barely had an audience, and it will fade away into oblivion without anyone noticing. And it's funny to think about because when teen drama started to feel tired and die in the mid mid-2000s, the show that came around and reinvented the genre and gave it a new life was the original Gossip Girl. And now, 15 years later, it is this new Gossip Girl that confirms the new death of a genre that was revitalized by its predecessor. And maybe that's really sad in a way, but it's also ironically poetic.